What's up, everybody? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin, John.
And we have yet another album review for you. So, this week has been kind of interesting just in terms of stuff we've gone over, because some of it is a little bit outside of our wheelhouse, or just bands that maybe we were fans of at one point and then we weren't.
Right.
This, however, is kind of an interesting one because this is a band that I've never really been a huge fan of.
And me either.
But admittedly, I was curious when I heard the singles. So we're going to go over the latest offering from Suicide Silence. Remember, you must die.
I will state right off the bat, even before we get into it, notably, that this is the first Suicide Silence record I've ever heard in its entirety.
This isn't actually the first one I've ever heard, but to round out this also comes out on the 10th on Century Media Records. This band formed in 2002 in Riverside, California. This is their 7th album overall, and I've pretty much been following them since The Cleansing, their debut album, which got a lot of hype. I thought it was pretty decent. I mean, at the time I was big into deathcore, and even then, this band kind of just seemed like, it was like, well, I mean, it's another, like, really heavy band. Like, There really wasn't much about them that stood out to me. Like, yeah, they were brutal and heavy, but there were a lot of brutal and heavy bands.
I don't want to say I've never heard them. I've heard a song here and there, but I couldn't fucking tell you what a song title was. So
yeah, I mean, most people know, like, Wake Up, but that was mostly due to that one dude's, like, screechy vocal take that he recorded, and man, did he get fucking memed. Now, this band is definitely a deathcore band. I saw them back in 2007. This was back with Mitch Luker, who sadly passed in 2012 in a motorcycle wreck, and honestly, I really wasn't blown away with them live, so it's kind of always kept me on the fence as a fan. Now, granted, any band can have a bad night, and maybe that was just a bad night, a bad sound. So I completely, will acknowledge that could have been the case.
Sure.
But after Mitch's death, they chose to go on and tapped one Eddie Hermida, frontman of All Shall Perish at the time, to kind of go on. And ever since then, it's been kind of a mixed bag. And then we got into this weird experimental phase with their self-titled album, which was gloriously memeable with the whole tee-hee, or whatever that fucking noise was. Yeah, now you remember. Like, oh, God, that.
Yep, I remember now.
And then I guess they got back to what they usually do with Become the Hunter. I kind of ignored that one pretty much after I heard some of the stuff in the self-titled one. I was like, no, I'm good. But we wanted to check this one out. And admittedly, I kind of liked the singles. I was like, yeah, this is just kind of straightforward and brutal. And full disclosure, going into this, I was kind of expecting to shit on this one.
Both of us were.
Yep.
I was going to take a hot, steamy dump on this record. It was going to be funny. I was going to laugh. I was going to drive home feeling accomplished.
Yeah, fuck you guys.
Yeah, meh.
But this kind of low-key kicks some ass. Like, more so than I thought it would. I mean, again, like, the singles I thought were decent. I mean, the first single I heard was You Must Die, and it's kind of goofy. The video is kind of goofy with them in old band makeup, but it's, brutal. It's heavy. It's slamming with some pretty decent riffs. It's kind of everything I expected from Suicide Silence. Like, yeah, there was some nasty breakdowns, some ferocious vocals from Eddie, and some absolutely pummeling drums with their new drummer, whose name I actually forget, but he's the guy that replaces Alex Lopez after many years. He left, I believe, last year. And as this album went on, I was like, dude, this is a lot better than I was expecting.
Yeah, I will readily admit that I was not expecting what we got. Far better than what I had assumed. Like, 100% far better than what I had assumed.
Yeah, I mean, it's still primal. It's still loaded with breakdowns. It's still fucking aggro as fuck, and maybe, like, a little silly at times. I mean, you kind of pair that with some of the music videos and some of the lyrics. And, while it is kind of about, like, time catching up with you and death is inevitable, it's kind of a goofy approach. Like, you get some interesting, like, chant-alongs, some bro magnon gang vocals every now and then. But kind of in between there, like, honestly, this might be one of their most riffy albums. Like, generally when I have heard Suicide Silence, and I do own some of their albums, it is mostly about just the heft and the chug and the brutality. And, I mean, that's kind of like the main thing of deathcore, but honestly, there's, like, some really clever riffs and good guitar interplay on here that is maybe more akin to death metal than it is deathcore.
I mean, that's true. I mean, first of all, let's talk about tone. Guitar tone, it's grimy, it's a little, like, buzzsaw-ish, it's chunky, it's Definitely not what you would expect from the normal, say, deathcore trope, so to speak, of like, usually it's just like down-tuned, clean, like laptop-ified chunk. And in this case, it sounded raw and disgusting.
Yeah, honestly, it kind of reminded me of, well, deathcore when I got into deathcore.
Yeah.
This is not like, you know, the modern deathcore acts. Like, I mean, definitely throw in like a band like Distant, which I just went over their last album, or Brand of Sacrifice, where it's very flashy, very loaded with like, you know, extra electronic effects and everything. I mean, hell, might as well throw in the new Periphery too. That one's absolutely loaded with those effects and other things. But it doesn't have that sort of production. The production is actually kind of stripped back and raw. Like, it's definitely tight, it's definitely polished, and I will say the bass kind of gets lost in the mix. But overall, it sounds good, and it sounds more natural. It sounds closer to what you're going to get live.
All right, for me personally, it didn't really start to stand out until we got to like track 5, the song "Kill Forever," a tremolo riff.
A sick one too.
Yep, a sick tremolo riff and some more death metal elements. I'm gonna be flat out honest. It reminded me of Aborted.
Yeah.
And not so much with the riffing and the music, but Eddie Hermida reminds me a lot of Sven from Aborted. Like,
yeah.
A lot. Like, he's got this even mixture of low growls and high screams, and just, if you listen to Aborted, you know what what Sven sounds like, and it sounds a lot like him, and it just brought this overall aura to the song that I didn't see coming, not in a million years, from a deathcore band.
Yeah, I gotta say, like, a lot of this kind of reminded me of Ingested too. Like, it's still brutal, it still has, again, all the breakdowns, but there's like an element of just like kind of clever riffing on here, like Endless Dark, a little bit more like, well, dark and sinister. Cool syncopated riffs, cool syncopated grooves, and instead of like trying to overload a breakdown with a whole bunch of extra noises and shit, like, they throw on like a cool melody on top, or like a really fun like vocal hook where fucking Eddie's having a fucking shit fit screaming about whatever. And when it comes down to like the pace of this album kind of grooves, and it's not just a breakdown groove all the time. Like, there are legit sections of just a solid sort of like mid-tempo, like, hey, let's just kind of groove this one out, chug it out, some nice clever riffs, like, you know, more than just, you know, mindless open chord chugging. Like, this has got fucking really good riffs.
Especially the song God Be Damned. First of all, I love that title. More tremolo riffs, and there's a lot of fucking groove, and it's more similar to like the early parts of deathcore, like when Job for a Cowboy was first real big, or like Despised Icon, even All Shall Perish in their early days.
Yeah.
It just kicks, dude. The groove in here fucking kicks, and it, again, is way more than just breakdowns.
And again, the breakdown riffs aren't just, you know, mindless open chugging. Like, you actually have some cool accents to them, like the cool bends that pop up in Capable of Violence, or God Be Damned once again, or Dying Life, which ends on these absolutely disgusting, slow bending riffs. And yeah, another fun trope about deathcore is if you hear a cool breakdown, you're almost guaranteed they're gonna fucking take a break, vocalist is gonna say some fucking nasty shit, and they're gonna slow that bitch down. And they do that. But honestly, I kind of like the builds toward it here. Like, it doesn't feel like as stereotypical because they're mixing in some like different ideas. Like, they're a little bit kind of off the deathcore reservation and maybe more on the death metal reservation. Especially when you get down to the last track, Full Void, which is honestly the best song I think I've ever heard from them. I will be point blank on that one.
Yep.
This is the most dynamic song. It has this cool, clean melody that opens it up, and then boom, into this like just absolutely sick riff, like flat out, like almost Morbid Angel level riff with a little bit of a hardcore touch.
And a little bit of Nile. It's got that Nile Middle Eastern feel, and those are two bands that I never thought I would ever say in regards to Suicide Silence. Morbid Angel and Nile.
Yeah.
And trust me, it's in there, and you'll hear it.
And literally one of the best leads I think I've ever heard this band do.
Yeah,
like,
dude.
It's very epic. It's got this really cool run of just epic sounding melodies across it, and vastly different than, well, most of the lead work on here, which is mostly just like quick dive bombs and sort of just noisy primal shit.
Noisy stuff through a wah pedal.
Yeah.
Is what it usually is. But in this case, it was like dive bombs and squealies and really neat melody. And again, the phrasing of this solo was way more than I expected.
And the breakdown groove that kind of carries a good chunk of this is absolutely catchy. Like, it's legit one of the catchiest moments. And towards the end, it has this really cool build up towards the end that kind of just lays on this fucking sick riff, this sick groove, and then kind of fades out to this, well, noisy outro that complements the noisy intro.
Bookends the noisy intro. And much like with bendy riffs, in the song Dying Life, there's this really cool off-time groove and dissonant melodic riffs.
There's a little bit of that on Fucked for Life, and this album doesn't have much in the way of atmosphere. Like, it is one after the other, and the aggression is fucking just peaked on every fucking moment on here. But hearing that little bit of melody and a little bit of atmosphere in here, like, man, I don't know if I want to call this his most mature album, because, I mean, there's still a lot of unga bunga here, but I would say it's one of their most polished. Now, as dynamic as this one is, it still kind of lays on a lot of the tropes. Like, it still has a formula, but the formula, for the most part, really works in here, and honestly, it's pretty engaging. That isn't to say that all this is absolutely great and we're just going to continuously stroke it in this review. There are some issues. Namely, I mean, lyrically, while the vocals are delivered ferociously,
yes.
I think Eddie fucking kills it on here. Some of the lyrics are a little dumb. And I mean, I get it, like, there's sort of a goofy nature to this band, like, especially if you look at their music videos.
Sure.
But I figured with such a, interesting, serious theme about, time creeping up on you, I don't know, I would expect, like, something a little bit more heady, but then again, they might have tried doing more heady stuff in the self-titled one, and, well, that didn't work out.
I mean, I guess you can't have the best of both worlds. I mean, musically, it's pretty damn good. So, I mean, I guess if I had to pick, poignant lyrics or a musically good album, in this case, for this band, I'd pick a musically good album.
Yeah. And, I mean, there are some tracks that are maybe, like, a little bit more filler. Like, they kind of stand out just because they don't feel like they're as well put together as some of the ones that are just, honestly, some of the best stuff they've ever written. Like, namely, You Must Die. It's a brutal opener. It's got all the elements of a nice brutal opener, but it is kind of basic. Like, it kind of just lays on maybe 3 main parts. And, they're all heavy, but they're not very interesting. And Altar of Self is, well, a kind of a pace breaker. Like, it kind of slows down the blast beats. It's more of a mid-tempo groove, but it's kind of dull.
And Fuck for Life, it starts heavy, but it's also just kind of the normal verse chorus breakdown bro moment. All right, and we're done.
Any chance to fucking chant the refrain of the song title? Because, I mean, that's kind of that song.
So, oddly enough, and I'm really shocked to say this, and I think we both are kind of shocked to say this, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. Much like we said, I was notably ready to take a dump on this album, and I can't, because it's really entertaining. For the most part, the songs don't really sound the same. There's a couple moments that have, again, notable tropes of just, hardcore beaten to the fucking ground. But, I mean, there's a lot of memorable riffs. The production, again, is really gnarly for a deathcore album. Not as polished, more raw sounding. The songs are entertaining. I'd probably listen to it again. And for the fact that I've never really listened to an album in its entirety because the songs that I heard in the past didn't really grab me, this was kind of a shocker. It was more entertaining than it wasn't. So,
that's fair.
Yeah, 3.5 for me. That's what I got.
I am, surprisingly, also at a 3.5. And much like John, I kind of expected that I was going to shit all over this. And then my butthole would not let me. It said, hold on, just check this out. And literally, as like this album kept going, I was like, dude, that's pretty fucking good.
Yeah,
wow, that's really good.
We kept looking at each other like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Point of the story is listen to your butthole. Sometimes it'll tell you important things like you have to poop now, and also maybe don't shit on this album, because it's honestly really solid. Like, the breakdowns are good. The riff work on here, honestly, I think is some of their best. And I actually own albums by this band, and, they've been, decent to just kind of and this is honestly the most memorable one that is stuck in my head.
Yeah.
Like, it is more than just a lumbering brute just doing blast beats and chugs. Like, there's more to it. There's actually some really solid writing on here.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of modern deathcore does irritate me with being just overproduced and just very basic. This, it's still, kind of basic in some areas, but for the most part, I really just enjoyed the energy on this one. That and kind of dialing back the sound a little bit. Like, this kind of sounds like deathcore's like earlier days, and honestly, it leans more towards death metal in terms of the riff department. Full Void is legit the best song I think they have ever written. Like, that is an absolutely catchy song. It is super well written. I would love to hear more of that, but I fear that would probably piss off their longtime friends that were like, no, man, I need music to punch strangers to in a circular pit. I can imagine they don't want to take that away from them, because what else are they going to do other than fucking chug Red Bull in the parking lot and just scream for hours?
All right, why piss off your fans if you don't have to?
Especially when the fans are already kind of like prematurely pissed off, like this is their fucking rage music. I get it. But yeah, I am legit surprised by this. In terms of like the lead-off albums that we're going to, I figured that this was going to be kind of the turkey, and I am pleasantly surprised with this. I actually might get this. Like, I haven't bought a fucking deathcore album in a while, but this was actually really good. So yeah, I mean, if you're more of a fan of deathcore that leans on the side of death metal, like, again, like Job for a Cowboy, like earlier Whitechapel, this is definitely fucking close to that. Like, I mean, I would say it kind of sounds like earlier Suicide Silence. Like, I'm sure there are definitely things about it that sound like Suicide Silence albums that I may not have been a fan of, but I just think this just sounds like a solid, tight fucking band that knows how to write riffs and grooves, and this is a really good album. So yeah, definitely give this one a chance. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsandmetal.com. Our store is there. We will be reloading that after Denver Death Fest.
After Denver Death Fest, April 20th through the 22nd at the King Room in Denver, Colorado. It's a full-bore breathing entity at this point. It's a lot bigger than we ever thought it would be. But anyway, not a big deal. It's pretty stacked with bands considering it's our first time doing this. $60 for 3 days, 45 for 2, or just 25 for 1. I don't give a crap, really. Come out, hang out. We won't be running around. We discussed that in an earlier video due to the elevation of the mountains and the fact that neither me or this cat are runners, or really anybody in the Thralls of Metal. You won't catch us running.
Unless something's chasing us, then I suggest you run too.
Right, unless we're being chased by a bear, which is altogether possible because we'll be in the mountains. But anyway, I don't think that there will be bears there, but there are some pretty whoop-ass death metal bands. Thank you to our vendors. Thank you to the sponsors. Thank you to everybody that's been a part of this. Thank you to Zach over at Swinging News Productions. Zach, I love you, man. I couldn't have done this without you. Anyway, Denver Death Fest, going to be a pretty good fucking time. Just, shy of 6 weeks here at this point? So, I think we need to buy plane tickets.
We do.
We haven't bought plane tickets yet. Not important. We'll be there. You should be too.
And of course, thank you all so much for liking, subscribing, following, all that shit. It's amazing doing this. Again, seeing the channel grow well past what we thought it'd be. I know the same shit I always fucking say. But I mean it. Thank you guys so much.
Indeed.
This is just a fuck ton of fun. Hell, you even got to see us fucking get surprised on this one and get out of our old fucking death metal curmudgeon way. Like, this is death metal gatekeeping. Bullshit. Floppy ear piercings, I hate them. But it turned out to be really good. So yeah, who knows? We might have some more surprises along the way. But either way, thank you guys for just watching and putting up with us. And we will catch you later.